What's up? My name's Jackson. I've never watched soccer before, but I'm watching every single game in the World Cup. And today we had so many great games. We started off with Group E, Curacao versus Ivory Coast, Ecuador versus Germany, and then we moved into Group F, Tunisia versus Netherlands, and Japan versus Sweden. And we finished the day with Group D, Turkey versus USA, and Paraguay versus Australia. And there was some really great stuff here. And I'm just gonna break down all the games, give you my thoughts. Remember, I've never watched soccer before, so I might not be hip to everything, but I am gonna give you what I have. And we started off the day with Curacao versus Ivory Coast and Ecuador versus Germany, but I'll talk about Curacao versus Ivory Coast first. In that game, I did predict Curacao would win, upsetting Ivory Coast, and I was wrong. I stood with them even at halftime, even though they were already down. But I thought Curacao could do it. I thought that they could pull one out, and they didn't. Unfortunately, Ivory Coast looked great. They looked strong. They looked fast. They looked big, just like they looked the first time I saw them. And I'm pretty sure that got them second place in the Group E, which is great stuff for Ivory Coast. I was rooting for that Curacao upset, but unfortunately they are out of the tournament now. But it happens. And they played some good soccer from what I've seen. I've only seen like 25-ish, 26-ish games, I believe. Maybe more than that. 12 plus 24. 36. I've seen 36 games now, but who's counting? But in those games, I've liked Curacao both times, and so I was rooting for them. Chong, I remember him. He's hype. I like his hair a lot. I like his movement style. He's fast, but he couldn't get anything in there today, unfortunately. Um, and that's okay. Sometimes I did hear was this like one of their first times making it to the World Cup? I don't think it was their first, but it was one of the first times, and I don't follow soccer, so I don't know, but I think they could come back in 4 years and make a better play at the actual World Cup itself. That being said, for Ivory Coast, they look really good. Let me see who they're playing in the tournament. Oh, we don't know. We don't know who they're gonna play, but it'll be on Tuesday during June 30th. Um, So Ivory Coast, I thought looked great. I thought they were fun to watch. They were strong. They were fast, like I said, and they won the game pretty handedly. So good job, Ivory Coast, and rest in peace, Curacao. On the other side of that was Ecuador versus Germany, and Ecuador hadn't scored any goals the whole tournament yet, and Germany won their first game 7-1, and they won their second game 2-1, and so you could not blame me for predicting that Germany would win. I thought the numbers made sense. But I've been saying through all of my predictions, hey, anything could happen at any game. You never want to only pick the favorite because if you only pick the favorite, you're going to get wrong. The favorite does not win every time, and Germany might be the favorite. Germany, I believe, won their group, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, they did. They won their group by goal difference, I believe. But they they lost to Ecuador. And so congratulations, Ecuador, for making it to third place. I don't know if that necessarily means that they're in the knockouts for certain. But no, they are. They are. So congratulations, Ecuador. That's a big win because I think going into this, they thought they were screwed. And they played really hard and they played really well. And I don't think a lot of people were expecting them to win, and they did. So that was a fun game, but I was rooting for Germany, so it was a little bit harder for me. And I also paid more attention to Curacao versus Ivory Coast during that. Watching simultaneous play has been fun, but it does take quite a lot of focus. But that's okay. I enjoy it. And so yeah, congratulations to all four of those teams. I'm so sorry, Curacao. Moving into Group F, we had Tunisia versus the Netherlands, and I predicted that Tunisia would win but that was mostly to troll. I didn't really think they would win. I know that the Netherlands are a good team in the World Cup, and I knew that Tunisia was not playing very good. Sweden beat them 5-1, and Japan also beat them. So I knew the Netherlands would probably beat them, but I wanted to take a chance on the team that wasn't the favorite, and unfortunately I was wrong. The Netherlands did beat them 3-1, but at least Tunisia got a goal, but the Netherlands looked strong. They didn't look bad at all. I thought that they probably would end up beating them, and they did. They did end up beating them, and that led to Netherlands, Japan, and Sweden all making it through to the knockouts. Japan versus Sweden was a tie. That was the game I was paying more attention to, and they were at each other's throats the whole time. I thought Japan had a little bit more of an aggressive aura, but it wasn't like one of those games where one team just bullies the other. Like they were going back and forth, and they ended with 1-1, and that's fine. They both made it through, so congratulations to both of those teams. Uh, I don't have much more to say than that. It was good. It was fun. I like Japan. I like their chances. Who are they? Do we know who they're playing? They're playing Brazil, and Brazil was pretty good yesterday. But the thing about Brazil is, I don't know if they have that chemistry. I don't know if they have it all there. I mean, I don't know all about soccer, but I do know that, some teams have some energy, some teams do not. I'll talk about the USA game in a couple minutes, but the USA was not playing with their same energy that they had for the other two games, except for like the first 25 minutes in the second half. In Brazil, I don't think I've seen play with their hype. They've scored goals. That's great. They won their group. That's great. But I don't think that I feel the same aura behind Brazil that I feel with some other teams. So then, moving on to Turkey versus the US. Well, I'll talk about them last because I have the most thoughts about that. Paraguay versus Australia. That's another one that tied. I thought Paraguay deserved the win, though. I think that they played really aggressively, really strong, and I think that people maybe thought Australia would win. They have that really big guy who's very aggressive and fast, and it didn't turn out to matter because it was 0-0. And I know the game is not all about goals, it's about movement and player chemistry, but Paraguay looked like they had more chemistry. They looked like they had more steam, more energy, more stamina than Australia, and Australia was kind of holding back the dog. It was back and forth. It wasn't one of those bullying games I was talking about, but it was, I thought in Paraguay's favor a lot of the time. Every time I would look at the screen, Paraguay would be in charge. So those are my thoughts on that game. But here comes the big important game to me because I am, of course, an American, so I'm gonna root for my country to win. It was Turkey versus the US. And, you know, n- not a lot could be could be done for either team, obviously, because Turkey could not win. They could not advance. And the USA could not lose. They were locked into that first place spot in their group because their two games they had won. And I believe this is true. I'm not certain. I could be very wrong, but I don't think the US has ever won three games in a row. And tonight that continued because in the very last couple seconds of the game, Turkey scored another goal that they really shouldn't have scored. And really they probably shouldn't have had time to score it, but they did. And you can't complain because the US did not defend well in that moment. They let the goal go in. And the US for the whole first half and then the back end of the second half, they were not playing like the same US that played against Paraguay and Australia. They were playing like a US that was sitting on their back feet. Maybe it's because they knew this game didn't matter. But I can't imagine that they wanted to take a loss. I can't imagine that they were thinking, "Oh yeah, we can lose. Let's just lose." They wanted to win, I bet, but they didn't play like it. They let Turkey bully them legitimately for the whole first half. And anytime Turkey would start bringing the ball back, the U.S. was having some defensive problems. But the bigger problem with the U.S. was that they couldn't get the ball out from their like they would get the ball from Turkey when Turkey's on their side, and then they couldn't get it back up often enough. Like they would often pass it into the middle third and then it would be turned over. They would pass it to each other and they wouldn't be communicating, and then one guy would run past enough to turn back around for it, and by the time that had happened, Turkey's gotten the ball. The communication and the chemistry was not there today, and that's why they lost. I mean, I think that it like the ref was calling, I think, a little bit more in favor of Turkey, and I kind of rage baited in my reel like the U.S. got screwed, but at the end of the day, the ref can only screw you so much. At least most of the time. I mean, I imagine there's got to be a scenario where the ref really screws you, but I don't know how much the ref screwed them today because the chemistry was off between US. US was not playing on the same page, and there were so many missed communications and passes that maybe got completed but got quickly turned over. And that was really disappointing to see. And I'm sure that was really disappointing to see for all the Americans that were watching. But Americans, we can't forget that just because we lose one game, we hate soccer now. We don't hate soccer. Soccer's great. Soccer's fun. And it's easy to just, kick around your ball and take home your socks and cry. But that's not what we should do. We have a game against Bosnia and Herzegovina on Wednesday and we got to come back to it and attack it. We can't let Bosnia and Herzegovina win. I mean, I was rooting for them yesterday, and I think they did a great job, and I have been rooting for them in this tournament. But now that they're against the U.S., it's time for them to go. The U.S. has to beat them, and if they don't beat them, that's embarrassing from such a strong start of the tournament. But I don't think it all has to do with that. I think also, Trusty was having a great game the entire 90 minutes, and then he got hurt right at the start of extra time. That was so unfortunate because I really feel like he was one of the main team leaders. Obviously, he scored a goal in the first 3 minutes. That's exciting, but he was doing so much more than that. And then he became unavailable almost in that last 7 minutes. So that was rough. Then the other thing I'll say is that they let that go on 2 extra minutes longer than the stoppage time, and that was not how long they should have let it go on for, I don't think. Like I don't know what was happening. The ref needed to call that sooner. But I'm only saying that because I'm American and they scored. At the end of the day, I'm definitely biased, and I wanted my team to win, and they lost. But I thought it was a great game. There was so much back and forth action and I was on my toes. I sound tired right now, and I am tired, but I'm the most energized by a game than I've been this entire time. And the USA lost, but it was a fun game. It was exciting. They both teams led. It was tied for so long. They both had explosive moments. It was great. That was really a good game. And there have been other good games, but this one was the most I was invested. And I watch every game, but I really watched this one, and it was good. I enjoyed it. I wish it weren't simultaneous play, specifically for this game. But we'll see how they do on Wednesday, and we will be back tomorrow morning to predict tomorrow's games. And I will see you guys then. Have a great night. Sleep well. If this is morning already for you, I'll see you in a couple hours. Yeah. Bye bye.